I think many leaders think they want to lead for the externals, money, fame, power, and glory. And they haven't really thought about what are their intrinsic motivations that cause them to want to lead. What's the purpose of their leadership? As the final paper for my students here at Harvard Business School, I asked them to write a paper about the purpose of their leadership. And that is probably the toughest question they have to answer. That's a really hard question because they haven't had enough experience to really know. And even though it's hard for them, I think it's really important to keep that question in front of you so you always know out there that I'm thinking about what's the purpose. And so I suggest to people that if you don't have your purpose, why would anyone want to follow you? Do you know where you're going? You can be, as Jim Burke, the CEO of Johnson & Johnson during the Tylenol situation, if you don't know your purpose and your values, you can swim in moral chaos because you're always buffeted by the winds. And so many leaders have failed because they weren't clear about their purpose. And they subject themselves to the media or to the stock market or the latest quarterly earnings. And that became their purpose, and that was a hollow purpose. So I feel it's really important for leaders to know exactly what their purpose is. Well, I spent a long time in my life thinking about what is that purpose. And I knew from the time I was 17 years old that I felt my calling, if you will, was to become a leader who would be, if you will, a role model for others in terms of practicing values and ethics. Not preaching, but practicing that. I always thought I'd influence more in my generation. I can tell you I was deeply disappointed in my generation of leaders that so many of them fell away from their values. I'm not just talking about the crooks who went to jail that are behind bars today, because in every decade we've had crooks. I'm talking about hundreds of CEOs that I know personally who failed because they lost sight of the purpose of their leadership. They got so caught up in trying to play the stock market game, play the compensation game, getting caught up in the Milton Friedman, let's maximize short-term shareholder value, that they lost sight of why they were called to lead, what their corporations were, and they destroyed great companies because the leadership didn't understand it was about the institution, not about their leadership. In my own case, I found a real sense of calling beyond trying to be a leader that could be a role model for others when I went to Medtronic. And I'll never forget spending a night in a little motel room with Earl Bakken, the founder, and him talking about the mission of the company. And when I first joined the company, he said, Bill, I want you to come to one of my mission sessions. And I said, well, Earl, why don't you, we're sitting in your office, let's talk about the mission right now. He said, no, I want you to come to the session. We had 30 people there. We had secretaries and technicians, new head of strategic planning, and the new president of the company. And Earl described how they'd been in a garage for 12 years, but how they were so passionate about impacting people's lives. And then at the end, he asked us to all come up and get a medallion. And it was a struck medallion of a person coming off an operating table in 3 forms, walking away to full life. And it said, towards full life on the back. He said, that's the mission of the company. You're here, Bill, and he handed me this medallion, to help people be restored to full life and health. And put this on your desk, because you're going to get frustrated. But you got to realize when you do get frustrated, it's not about making more money for yourself or making more money for the company. It's about those patients out there who need our products that can help restore them to full life and health. Medtronic has a wonderful event that's called the Holiday Party in December. It's really not a party at all. It's a program in which the company, every year since 1962, when the company was virtually bankrupt, brings in 6 patients. And these patients tell their story of a Medtronic product they've got in the last year. And these stories are very emotional, very passionate. They talk about how the company helped save their life, or allowed them to have children, restored them to full life. And I remember the very first session I went to, the founder, Earl Bakken, suggested to me, he said, Bill, keep an eye on this young man who's here coming in today. Well, 5 patients got up and told their story, very moving. And the 6th patient got up was a young man named T.J. Flack from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. T.J. was 18 years old, and he described how he had cerebral palsy since birth. And for 16 years of his life, he had surgery every year. And each year, he was in a body cast, and at a certain point in time, he said, enough of this. I'm not doing any more surgery because it never gets better. Well, his body became very rigid. He couldn't walk. He had to go to a special school. He had to be in a wheelchair. He had no life. He said it took him an hour to get dressed in the morning. When TJ was 18, he was linked up with a creative doctor in Pittsburgh Children's Hospital, Dr. Leland Albright, who implanted a Medtronic pump with the drug baclofen in it that he said transformed his life. And as he told his story, he said, now I can get out of bed in 5 minutes. I'm going to a normal school. I walk up 5 flights of stairs every day. I'm dating a girl. It's like he had his life back. And I was sitting there with tears in my eyes. And I looked over at the guy. I was kind of embarrassed. I looked over at the guy next to me. He had tears in his eyes, too. So I said it was okay. But in that instant, I realized what my job and what Medtronic's work was all about.